I was 68 when my daughter leaned across my kitchen table, lowered her voice and said, "Dad, you don't need a lawyer." The way she said it, calm, practiced, almost gentle, told me I absolutely did. She didn't know then that I had already hired two. My name is Parker Lawson, and let me tell you something about building a life from scratch. I spent 40 years in construction, starting with nothing but a high school diploma and a willingness to work 16-hour days. By the time I retired, I owned this 15-acre cattle ranch outside Austin, $850,000 in land value, another $400,000 in equipment and livestock. Every fence post, every barn beam, every head of cattle represents sweat equity. I built this place the hard way, and I'll be damned if I'm going to lose it the easy way. The morning had started like any other. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead, checking cattle prices on my phone while the sun came up over the pasture. My late wife Sarah used to say our home breathed with us. Now it breathed only with me, but I'd grown comfortable with that rhythm. What I hadn't grown comfortable with was the tone my family had started using around me. Soft, careful, dismissive, like I was already halfway to the grave and just too stubborn to lie down. Madison arrived without calling first. That should have been my first warning. In 45 years, that girl had never just dropped by unless she wanted something. She walked in like she owned the place, which I guess was the whole point. Her husband Griffin followed behind her, wearing that cologne that costs more than most people make in a day and a smile that wouldn't fool a blind man. "Dad," Madison said, settling into the chair across from me like she was preparing for a board meeting. "We need to talk about your situation here. My situation." As if living on the ranch I'd built with my own hands was somehow a problem that needed solving. Griffin opened his briefcase, and yes, the man carried a briefcase to visit his father-in-law, and pulled out a thick folder. "We've been doing some research," he said, sliding it across the table, "about estate planning, financial security, that kind of thing." I didn't touch the folder. 40 years of dealing with contractors and lawyers had taught me that when someone pushes paperwork at you without explaining what's in it first, you're probably about to get screwed. "What kind of research?" I asked. Madison jumped in before Griffin could answer. "The kind that protects you, Dad. You're 68 years old, living alone on a working ranch. What happens if you get hurt? What happens if you can't manage the finances anymore? We're just trying to plan ahead." Plan ahead. That's rich, coming from a woman who'd never planned past her next shopping trip. "I appreciate the concern," I said, keeping my voice level, "but I think I'm managing just fine." Griffin leaned forward, his voice taking on that tone people use when they're trying to convince you of something for your own good. "That's exactly the problem, Parker. You think you're fine, but statistically, men your age often don't recognize when they need help. Statistically." The man was talking about me like I was a number in some actuarial table instead of sitting right across from him. "I see," I said. "And what kind of help are you thinking I need?" Madison and Griffin exchanged one of those looks that married couples think is subtle, but actually screams, "We've rehearsed this conversation." "Well," Madison said, her voice getting that sing-song quality she'd used as a teenager when she wanted something expensive, "we think it might be time to simplify things. Maybe move somewhere more manageable, somewhere with people around to help if you need it. Somewhere more manageable." Translation, sell the ranch. "And the cattle?" I asked. "Dad, you don't need to worry about cattle anymore. You've earned the right to relax." The right to relax. As if 40 years of building something meant I should be grateful to watch it get dismantled. Griffin cleared his throat. "The thing is, Parker, the longer we wait to make these decisions, the more complicated they become. Legal issues, tax implications, market fluctuations. It's better to act while you still have full capacity to make these choices." While I still had full capacity. There it was. The question of my mental competence, wrapped up in lawyer speak and delivered with a smile. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the pasture where my black Angus were grazing in the morning sun. I'd bought my first 3 head of cattle with money I'd saved from my first construction job. Now I had 47 head, each one representing years of careful breeding and smart management. These weren't just livestock to me, they were proof that a man could start with nothing and build something that mattered. "You know what I find interesting?" I said, not turning around. "You're talking about simplifying my life, but what you're really talking about is complicating yours. Taking over my finances, managing my property, making decisions about my future. That doesn't sound simple to me. That sounds like work. When I turned back around, Madison's smile had gotten a little tighter around the edges. "We want to help you, Dad. That's what families do." "Is that what this is?" I asked, nodding toward the folder. "Help?" Griffin's patience was starting to fray around the edges. "Look, Parker, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. We're trying to be respectful here, but there are legal options if we think you're not capable of making sound decisions anymore." And there it was, the threat, delivered with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I walked back to the table and sat down, looking at both of them carefully. "Let me see what's in that folder." Madison relaxed slightly, thinking she'd won. Griffin pushed the folder toward me with the air of a man who'd just closed a deal. I opened it slowly, reading each page carefully. Power of attorney documents, property transfer, agreements, bank account access forms, guardianship paperwork. Everything you'd need to take complete control of someone's life, all laid out nice and neat and legal. When I finished reading, I closed the folder and looked up at my daughter. "Madison," I said quietly, "when exactly did you stop being my child and start being my parent?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Because that's what this is, isn't it? You've decided I'm not competent to run my own life anymore, so you're going to take over. For my own good, of course." "Dad, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being accurate." I stood up again, this time moving toward the front door. "I think this conversation is over." Griffin stood up too, his face flushing red. "Parker, don't make this harder than it has to be. We're trying to help you here." "No," I said, opening the front door. "You're trying to help yourselves. There's a difference." After they left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time staring at that folder. Then I picked up my phone and called a number I'd gotten from my buddy Chuck at the VFW, a lawyer who specialized in elder law. "I need an appointment," I told the receptionist, "and I'm going to need 2 lawyers, not just one. May I ask, why 2? I looked at the folder again, seeing my entire life reduced to legal documents and transfer papers, because I have a feeling I'm going to need all the help I can get. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was worried, but because I was angry. The kind of deep, slow-burning anger that comes when you realize people have been playing you for a fool. I kept thinking about Griffin's words. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," like I was some kind of obstacle standing between them and what they wanted. What they wanted was my ranch, my life's work, everything I'd built from nothing. I got up around 3 a.m. and walked out to the barn. Sometimes when my mind won't settle, physical work helps me think clearly. I spent 2 hours checking equipment, organizing tools, doing the kind of maintenance work that keeps a ranch running. By sunrise, I had a plan. First thing Monday morning, I drove into town to see my banker. Now, I've been banking at First National for 22 years since I bought this property. I know these people, and they know me. When I walked in and asked to speak with someone about account security, they didn't treat me like some confused old man. They treated me like a valued customer who might have a problem. "Mr. Lawson," the branch manager said, leading me into his office. "What can we do for you today?" "I need to know if anyone's been asking questions about my accounts," I said. "Family members, specifically." His expression shifted slightly. "Has someone been pressuring you about your finances?" "You could say that." He turned to his computer and started typing. After a few minutes, he looked back at me with concern. "Mr. Lawson, I'm showing several inquiries about your accounts over the past 6 months. Phone calls, asking about balances, requests for account statements, even an attempted credit check. All from someone claiming to be your daughter." My stomach dropped. What kind of information was given out? "None," he said quickly. "We don't discuss account details with anyone without proper authorization, but the fact that someone was trying—" He trailed off, letting me fill in the blanks. "How long has this been going on?" The first inquiry was in March. The most recent was last week. March. That was when Madison first started talking about me getting older and needing help with complex decisions. When Griffin first mentioned that I should think about the future and maybe simplify things. They'd been planning this for 6 months. "I want to put additional security on all my accounts," I said. "Password protection, authorization requirements, the whole thing." "Absolutely." "And Mr. Lawson?" He leaned forward. "If you're being pressured to make financial decisions you're not comfortable with, there are resources available. Legal protections. I nodded. I'm working on that. From the bank, I drove straight to Hudson and Spencer, the law firm my buddy Chuck had recommended. The receptionist was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every kind of family drama you could imagine. "Mr. Lawson," she said when I gave my name. "Mr. Hudson is expecting you." Hudson turned out to be a man about my age, silver-haired and calm. His partner, Spencer, was younger but had the kind of steady demeanor that comes from dealing with difficult situations. They listened without interrupting while I explained what had happened. "Let me see the documents," Hudson said when I finished. I pulled out the folder Madison had left and spread the papers across his desk. Both lawyers studied them carefully, occasionally exchanging glances. "Mr. Lawson," Spencer said finally, "these documents would give your daughter complete control over your assets, your property, your bank accounts, even your medical decisions. Once signed, they would be very difficult to revoke." That's what I figured. Hudson leaned back in his chair. "The concerning part is the timeline. These documents are dated for this week, but the language suggests they've been prepared for months. Someone's been planning this carefully." 6 months, according to my banker. Spencer nodded grimly. "That suggests premeditation. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment concern for your welfare. This is a coordinated attempt to gain control of your assets. What can I do about it?" "Several things," Hudson said. "First, we document everything. The bank inquiries, the pressure tactics, the attempt to rush you into signing. Second, we create legal protections that prevent anyone from accessing your accounts or making decisions for you without a court order. Third, we prepare for the possibility that they might try to have you declared incompetent." That last one hit me like a punch to the gut. "They can do that? They can try," Spencer said. "But it's not easy, especially when the person in question is clearly competent. You're managing a successful ranch, your financial records are in order, and you're seeking legal counsel proactively. Those aren't the actions of someone who's lost capacity." Hudson pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me about your daily routine, how you manage the ranch, your finances, your medical care. We need to document your independence." For the next hour, I walked them through my life. How I check cattle every morning, manage feed schedules and veterinary care, how I track market prices and make decisions about buying and selling livestock, how I maintain equipment, manage seasonal hiring, balance the books, how I've increased the ranch's value by 40% over the past 5 years through careful management and smart investments. By the time I finished, both lawyers were nodding. "Mr. Lawson," Hudson said, "you're running a complex agricultural operation worth over $1 million. You're making sophisticated financial decisions on a regular basis. Any court would be hard-pressed to find you incompetent. What's our next move?" Spencer smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. "We set a trap." They explained their plan. Instead of confronting Madison and Griffin directly, we'd let them think they were winning. I'd continue to act uncertain, maybe even confused. Meanwhile, the lawyers would prepare ironclad legal protections behind the scenes. "When they make their final push," Hudson explained, "we'll be ready, and we'll have everything documented." "How long do you think we have?" "Based on what you've told us," Spencer said. "Not long. They're getting impatient. People who are planning to steal usually accelerate when they think time is running out." I drove home that afternoon feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Confident. Not because I thought this was going to be easy, but because I finally had a plan. And after 40 years in construction, I knew that half the battle in any project was having a solid plan. That evening, Madison called. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice sweet as syrup. "How are you feeling today?" How was I feeling? Like I'd just discovered my own daughter was planning to steal everything I'd worked for, but I wasn't about to tell her that. "Oh, I said, letting a little weariness creep into my voice. "Getting older every day. That's what I was afraid of. Griffin and I have been talking, and we really think you should reconsider those documents we showed you. For your own protection. For my own protection." "Right. I'm still thinking about it," I said. "Well, don't think too long, Dad. The longer we wait, the more complicated things get." "Why don't we plan to get together this weekend? We could go through everything together, make sure you understand all the details, make sure I understood the details of how they were going to rob me blind." "That sounds good," I said. "Saturday afternoon?" "Perfect. And Dad, maybe this time we should just keep it between family. No need to involve outsiders." "Outsiders. Like lawyers." Of course, I said. Just family. After I hung up, I called Hudson. They took the bait, I told him. Saturday afternoon. Perfect, he said. That gives us 5 days to get everything ready. By Saturday, Mr. Lawson, you're going to be untouchable. For the first time in months, I smiled. Madison thought she was hunting, but she had no idea she'd just walked into a trap. And come Saturday, she was going to find out exactly what this old rancher was made of. The week leading up to Saturday felt like the calm before a storm. I went about my normal routine, checking cattle, maintaining equipment, managing the day-to-day operations of the ranch. But underneath it all, I was preparing for war. Wednesday morning, Hudson called with an update. We've filed protective orders on all your accounts, he said. As of now, no one can access your financial information without your direct authorization and a court order. We've also prepared a comprehensive competency evaluation that documents your mental acuity and decision-making capacity. What's that involve? We brought in a geriatric psychiatrist and a financial analyst. They've reviewed your ranch records, your investment decisions, your day-to-day management practices. The conclusion is that you're not only competent, you're exceptionally sharp for a man of any age. That felt good to hear, even though I already knew it. There's something else, Hudson continued. We did some digging into your daughter and son-in-law's financial situation. I think you should know what we found. I sat down in my kitchen chair, looking out at the pasture where my cattle were grazing peacefully. Go ahead, they're in significant debt. Credit cards, car loans, a second mortgage on their house. Griffin's consulting business isn't doing as well as they've been pretending. Based on what we can see, they're about 6 months away from serious financial trouble. Suddenly it all made sense. The timing, the urgency, the pressure to sign immediately. They weren't planning for my future, they were trying to solve their own problems. How bad is it? Bad enough that your ranch would solve all their problems and then some. The question is whether they plan to take care of you after they took control or whether they had other plans. Other plans. Like putting me in the cheapest care facility they could find and pocketing the difference. Thursday, my grandson Cooper stopped by after his shift at the auto repair shop where he'd been working since graduating high school. Cooper was 22, built like his grandfather, and had more sense in his little finger than his mother had in her whole head. Hey, Grandpa, he said, settling into the chair across from me with a beer. Mom's been asking weird questions about you. What kind of questions? Like whether I think you're getting confused, whether you've been forgetting things, whether I'm worried about you living alone out here. He took a sip of his beer and looked at me, carefully. I told her you're sharper than most guys half your age, but she didn't seem to like that answer. Smart kid. What else did she say? She asked if I'd be willing to testify that you need help managing your affairs, said it would be for your own good to protect you from making mistakes. Cooper shook his head. I told her she was crazy if she thought I'd do that. Good man. Grandpa, what's really going on? Mom and Griffin have been acting strange for months, whispering on the phone, having meetings they won't talk about, and now all these questions about your mental state? I looked at this young man who'd spent summers working alongside me since he was 14, learning how to fix engines, mend fence, and handle cattle. He'd earned every dollar I'd ever paid him, and he'd never asked for anything he hadn't worked for. Cooper, I said, how would you feel about learning to run a cattle ranch? His eyes lit up. Are you serious? Dead serious. But first, I need to deal with your mother and stepfather. They want to take control of this place, and they're not planning to ask permission. Cooper's expression hardened. Over my dead body. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Friday evening, Madison called again. Hi, Dad. Just wanted to confirm tomorrow at 2 p.m. Griffin and I are really looking forward to getting this all sorted out. Getting this all sorted out. Like my life was a messy closet that needed organizing. I'll be here, I said, letting a little uncertainty creep into my voice. I've been thinking about what you said, about simplifying things. Oh, that's wonderful, Dad. You're making the right choice. Trust me. Trust me. Those 2 words from someone planning to steal everything I owned. Madison, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you love me? There was a pause, just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Dad, what kind of question is that? Of course I love you, that's why we're doing this. I see. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about the daughter I'd raised. I remembered teaching her to ride her first horse, helping her with homework, walking her down the aisle at her wedding. Where had that little girl gone? When had she turned into someone who could look me in the eye and lie about loving me while planning to steal my life's work? Saturday morning arrived clear and bright. I got up early, did my usual rounds with the cattle, then came back to the house to wait. Hudson and Spencer would arrive at 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Madison and Griffin. The plan was for them to park around back, out of sight, then enter through the kitchen door after Madison and Griffin were seated. At 1:15, my phone rang. It was Madison. "Dad, we're running a little early. Would it be okay if we came over now?" They were trying to catch me off guard, show up before I was ready. Classic manipulation tactic. "Sure," I said. "Come on over." I immediately called Hudson. "They're coming early. We're 5 minutes out. Just keep them talking until we get there." At 1:20, Madison and Griffin pulled into my driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as they got out of their car. Griffin was carrying a briefcase and what looked like a small recording device. Madison had a folder and a camera. They were planning to document this, probably to prove later that I had willingly signed everything. I opened the door before they could knock. "Dad!" Madison said, giving me a hug that felt about as warm as a handshake from a debt collector. "You look good. Ready to get this taken care of?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. Griffin walked past me into the living room, already spreading papers across my coffee table like he owned the place. "I've brought everything we need," he said. "This shouldn't take long." That's when I heard Hudson's truck pull up to the back of the house. "Actually," I said, settling into my favorite chair, "I think it might take longer than you expect." Madison looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" I smiled at my daughter, the first genuine smile I'd given her in months. "I mean," I said, "that before we sign anything, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're doing here." Griffin glanced at his watch impatiently. "Parker, we've been over this. These documents protect your interests." "My interests," I repeated. "Right." That's when Hudson and Spencer walked through the kitchen door. Madison's face went white. Griffin dropped his pen. "Dad," Madison said, her voice shaky, "what is this?" I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd been planning to steal everything I'd worked for, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Completely, absolutely calm. "Madison," I said quietly, "remember when you told me I didn't need a lawyer?" She nodded, unable to speak. "Well," I said, "I brought 2. Now why don't you repeat what you just said about these documents protecting my interests? I'd like my attorneys to hear it." The silence in my living room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Madison stared at Hudson and Spencer like they were ghosts, while Griffin looked like a man who'd just realized he'd walked into a trap he'd set for someone else. "Dad," Madison finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, "you don't understand what you're doing." Hudson stepped forward, his voice calm and professional. "Mr. Lawson understands perfectly. The question is whether you do, Ms. Lawson." Spencer moved to my side, placing a thick folder on the coffee table next to Griffin's documents. "Before we proceed, I think everyone should understand the legal situation here." Griffin found his voice first. "Now wait just a minute. This is a family matter. We don't need lawyers complicating things." "Interesting perspective," Hudson said, "from someone who brought recording equipment and pre-drafted legal documents to pressure an elderly man into signing over his life's assets." Madison's face flushed red. "We're trying to help him. He's getting old. He's forgetting things. He needs protection." "Protection," I said, standing up slowly. "Let me tell you about protection, Madison. Real protection would have been calling to check on me more than twice a year. Real protection would have been offering to help with ranch work instead of trying to take it away from me. Real protection wouldn't involve 6 months of unauthorized attempts to access my bank accounts." Her mouth fell open. How did you?" "I'm 68 years old, not brain dead," I said. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my own banker started asking careful questions about whether anyone was pressuring me?" Spencer opened his folder. "Ms. Lawson, Mr. Hayes, I'm required to inform you that all attempts to access Mr. Lawson's financial information without authorization have been documented and reported. Elder financial abuse is a felony in Texas." Griffin shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous! We're his family!" "Family," Hudson said quietly, "doesn't usually conduct 6-month campaigns to gain control of someone's assets. Family doesn't research competency laws and guardianship procedures. Family doesn't prepare recording equipment to document what they hope will be a confused old man's surrender. How do you... Griffin started, then stopped. How do we know? Spencer smiled grimly. Because we do our homework, Mr. Hayes. Just like you did yours. The difference is our homework was legal. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised from nothing, who'd never worked a day in her life but somehow felt entitled to everything I'd built. Madison, I said, I want you to answer one question honestly. When you signed your mother's will as witness, did you read it? She looked confused. Of course I read it. Then you know she left everything to me, with instructions that it should go to the family member who most embodies the values we tried to instill. Did you ever wonder who that might be? Her face went pale. I pulled out a document Spencer had prepared. This is my new will. Everything goes to Cooper. The ranch, the cattle, the equipment, the investment accounts, all of it. Cooper? Madison's voice cracked. But he's just a kid. He's 22 years old, and he's worked this ranch with me for 8 summers. He knows the business, he respects the land, and he's never once asked me for anything he hadn't earned. I looked directly into her eyes, unlike some people. Griffin was frantically shuffling through his papers. You can't do this, Parker. You signed a preliminary agreement. Hudson chuckled. No, he didn't. What he signed was a receipt acknowledging that you'd shown him documents. Documents which, I might add, would have been thrown out of any court in the country as products of undue influence and elder abuse. Spencer addressed Madison directly. Ms. Lawson, your father is competent, financially secure, and managing $1 million agricultural operation successfully. Any attempt to have him declared incompetent would not only fail, it would result in criminal charges for attempted financial exploitation. Madison was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. This isn't fair. We're drowning in debt. We need help. Then get a job, I said simply. Like I did when I was your age. Like Cooper does now. Like everyone else in the world who needs money. Griffin wasn't finished. Parker, you're making a huge mistake. Who's going to take care of you when you get sick? Who's going to manage this place when you can't? Cooper, I said. And if something happens to both of us, the ranch will be sold and the proceeds will go to the local veterans shelter. Either way, you won't see a dime. Hudson stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Lawson, I strongly advise you to leave now. Any further attempts to contact Mr. Lawson about financial matters will be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. Madison stood up shakily. Dad, please, don't do this. I'm your daughter. I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the little girl who used to help me feed the chickens, who'd fallen asleep in my lap during Saturday afternoon baseball games. That little girl was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Madison, I said quietly, daughters don't steal from their fathers. Daughters don't lie about loving someone while planning to rob them blind. Daughters don't threaten their own parents with legal action for refusing to be victims. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You made your choice 6 months ago when you started planning this. Today, I'm making mine. After they left, the house felt different, cleaner somehow, like a bad smell had finally been cleared out. Hudson and Spencer finished up the paperwork, ensuring that every protection was in place. No one could access my accounts, challenge my competency, or interfere with my property without going through them first. What happens now? I asked. Now you live your life, Spencer said, on your terms. That evening, Cooper came over for dinner. I grilled steaks and we sat on the back porch, looking out over the pasture as the sun set behind the hills. So, he said, Mom's pretty upset. I imagine she is. She called me, crying, saying you'd lost your mind and turned against your own family. Cooper took a bite of steak and grinned. I told her maybe she should have thought about that before she tried to steal your ranch. Smart kid. Definitely gets that from his grandfather. Cooper, I said, running, this place isn't easy. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Are you sure you want that responsibility? He looked out at the cattle, then back at me. Grandpa, I've been watching you build this place my whole life. It's not just a ranch to me. It's proof that if you work hard and treat people right, you can build something that lasts. I felt something tight in my chest loosen. Your grandmother would have liked hearing that. She did hear it, Cooper said quietly. I told her the same thing the summer before she died. She said I was going to do just fine. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell over the ranch, my ranch, soon to be Cooper's ranch, but for now, mine to enjoy in peace. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Madison. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. She apologized for any misunderstanding and hoped we could work things out as a family. I threw it away without finishing it. Some people think family means you have to forgive anything, accept any treatment, enable any behavior. But I learned something important these past few months. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. It's about earning the right to be in someone's life. Madison lost that right when she decided I was too old and too weak to protect what was mine. She was wrong about the weak part. If you're reading this and you recognize something familiar in my story, let me tell you something. You're not too old to fight back. You're not too weak to stand up for yourself. You're not obligated to let anyone, family or not, take what you've earned. Trust your instincts. Get help when you need it. And remember, when someone tells you that you don't need a lawyer, that's exactly when you need two. My name is Parker Lawson. I'm 68 years old, and I'm nobody's victim. Neither are you.